My sister Melissa always made me feel small, at family dinners, at holidays, even in my own home. So when she stood up at my wedding and tried to humiliate me in front of everyone, it felt like history repeating. But this time, I didn't shrink. I stood tall, told the truth, and let her choke on her own lie. That was the day I stopped playing the quiet sister and started being heard. It all started when she stood up. Her voice cut through the vineyard air like a cracked whip. "She's not a lawyer. She lies because she is jealous of my success." Gasps. Forks clattered. One woman dropped her phone. I didn't blink. I adjusted the veil draped over my shoulder, looked her straight in the eye, and said evenly, "You're right. I'm not a lawyer." Then I raised my phone. I own the law firm. Dead silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. Even the violinist in the corner dropped her bow. Trevor, Melissa's boyfriend, blinked hard behind his whiskey tumbler. He suddenly looked like he'd swallowed a marble. His hands, always so still, twitched on the glass stem, and for a second, I swear I saw him mouth, "Oh no." Rosa, my best friend since kindergarten, stood at the edge of the patio in a slate gray dress. She didn't gasp, didn't flinch, just nodded once, like she'd been waiting for this moment since 1998. But let's rewind. Because 3 weeks earlier, I sat in my home office in South Austin, staring at my wedding invite list and wondering whether peace was worth the price of admission. Melissa's name sat there like a paper cut I couldn't ignore. She had a way of making family dinners feel like boardroom audits. She never shouted, but every word she chose was precise, sparkly, and double-edged. Still, my mother had said, "You'll regret it if you don't invite her." Dad had said, "She's still your sister." And Rosa, bless her loyal heart, just said, "You want her there to see what you've built." I thought I'd play nice. I thought wrong. Because 3 days later, I got an HR email confirming a new senior analyst had joined the firm. His name? Trevor Blaine. And that's when I felt it, like hearing a melody you forgot you wrote. Trevor Blaine. I stared at the HR welcome email, the kind with too much white space and not enough scrutiny. There it was in bold. "Please welcome Trevor Blaine, Senior Financial Analyst, reporting to the Strategic Operations Unit." Rosa had CC'd me. And in the neat footer, just above the firm motto, his emergency contact was listed, Melissa Keller. I didn't scream. I didn't even text Rosa. I just closed the email, opened his onboarding file, and flagged his name for Level 2 Access Delay Pending Ethics Review. See, people think ownership looks like a corner office or yelling in meetings. It doesn't. It looks like flagging someone's clearance and letting the system catch the snag. I leaned back in my chair, wedding binder still open on the desk, and thought, This is what she brought to my wedding? He'd listed her. She hadn't mentioned me, which meant one of two things. Either she didn't know where he worked, or she knew exactly and assumed I'd stay silent. Rosa texted 5 minutes later. "You saw him, huh?" I just sent back, "We'll keep it quiet. For now." She replied with a gif of a duck gliding over water, feet paddling madly beneath. The next week, Trevor showed up in the office. Tall, polished, a little too quick with the compliments. Said he was thrilled to contribute, signed his welcome note with, "Hope to bring great value." I skimmed his resume. Clean. A little too clean. 2 job transitions with no references carried forward. I started a folder. That Friday, I saw the RSVP card from Melissa again. It had her handwriting in silver ink, slanted and smug. About time the quiet sister settled down. Trevor had no clue whose firm he was walking into. Melissa had no clue how loud her lies could echo. And neither of them knew I was done playing the quiet sister. Because the night before the wedding, I heard it. Melissa, on the back porch, whispering into her phone, "She's gonna cry when everyone hears the truth." She said it like she was savoring a secret. One hand curled around a wine glass, the other cupping her phone. I'd stepped out to check on the lighting crew, and there she was, silhouetted against the string lights, smug in her rehearsal dress. "She's going to cry," Melissa whispered. "Everyone thinks she's this big success, but I know better." I froze behind the trellis. The florist had left a bucket of hydrangeas beside me, and I remember my hand tightening around the handle until the metal bit into my skin. "She still acts like some big-shot lawyer," she went on. "But you'll see, everyone will." I didn't hear the other side of the call. But I saw Trevor step onto the far side of the porch, just inside earshot. He didn't say a word, didn't move closer, just leaned against the railing, quiet as a secret. Melissa never saw him. Neither of them saw me. Later that night, after most guests had gone to their rooms, Rosa found me in the Vineyard's prep kitchen, absently slicing into the sample cake tiers. She asked, "How bad?" I said, "She thinks I'm going to cry." Rosa didn't flinch. She picked up the smallest plate, took a bite of the almond layer and said, "Then don't give her the satisfaction." I looked down at the cake. The layers were clean, perfect, like a legal file, precise, with nothing bleeding out. The next morning, I wore my mother's pearls. Melissa gave me a look that said, "Oh, now she wants to look fancy." Aunt Doreen kissed her on the cheek and said, "You should have been the one getting married first." I smiled like it didn't touch me. Then I tucked my phone into my bouquet. Because inside it, I had every document she didn't know existed. My firm's charter, board votes, ownership filings, and one pristine copy of Trevor's onboarding form with her name attached. I walked to the altar, calm. I wasn't the one who was going to cry. We'd barely gotten through the minister's welcome. The sunlight had just begun to hit the vineyard rose in that gold hour kind of way. My fiancé, now husband, had just turned to me with a grin that made my heart stop when Melissa moved. She didn't walk. She strutted. From her seat 3 rows back, right side, she marched straight to the mic stand. I saw her nudge a waiter out of the way. Aunt Doreen's eyes lit up like a soap opera villain had just hit her cue. Melissa leaned into the mic, fake sweet at first. "Sorry, just a quick moment." The crowd shifted. My cousin barked a laugh. No one knew what was coming. Then she said it, loud, clear, and soaked in condescension. "She's not a lawyer. She's jealous of my success." The sky might as well have split in half. My breath didn't hitch. I didn't drop my bouquet. Instead, I stepped forward. "You're right," I said. "I'm not a lawyer." Gasps. A few turned to me in shock. Others stared at her, unsure if this was some twisted toast or a meltdown. Then I pulled out my phone. I own the law firm. There was a flicker, barely perceptible on Trevor's face. Recognition. Dread. Betrayal. He looked like a man watching his whole career fall off a ledge he didn't see coming. I tapped the screen. "I'd be happy to share the firm's charter," I added, "since this seems to be a public forum now." A beat passed. No one breathed. Melissa's jaw clenched. Her cheeks flushed the color of oversteeped hibiscus tea. I wasn't done. "And Trevor here?" I said, turning toward him. "He just joined my firm last week." I saw it happen. His eyes darting, calculating exits, but there were none. I smiled, crisp. "Let's chat Monday about ethics training." The mic squealed again, and Melissa finally stepped back. She didn't say another word, just stood there, trembling, eyes flicking from me to Trevor, like maybe one of us would call it a prank, a joke, something she could spin. Trevor said nothing. The crowd started murmuring. Not loud, but enough. Just whispers and shifting chairs, and a few audible, "Oh my gods." Someone near the back actually clapped once, then stopped like they realized too late this wasn't a show. Aunt Doreen looked like she was trying to disappear into her shawl. The officiant, bless his heart, cleared his throat and said, "Shall we continue?" We did. The rest of the ceremony went smooth as silk. My husband squeezed my hand like he was anchoring both of us to the earth. Rosa stood beside me, serene, like this was all going to plan. And it was, just not Melissa's. After the vows, I hugged our guests like nothing had happened. People tried to whisper their congratulations and their questions. "She really didn't know? Did you plan that? I didn't know you owned the place." I smiled and kept my voice gentle. I like to keep things quiet. Trevor kept his distance. Rosa leaned over during dinner and murmured. I counted 4 relatives who deleted their Instagram posts mid-reception. I said, "Only 4?" She laughed into her wine. Melissa and Aunt Doreen left early. No goodbye, no excuse, just gone. "But Trevor?" He lingered. He stood near the dessert table, awkward and pale. When I passed by, he opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Apologize? Beg? I'll never know. Because I didn't stop walking. Monday morning, HR called him in. Not because I demanded it, because I documented it, quietly. Months ago, when I learned how people like him move through companies unchecked. He wasn't fired, but he didn't leave that meeting with the title he came in with. And his emergency contact file? Let's just say it's no longer marked active. I was in the office by 7:45. Desk clean. Coffee black. My phone chimed once. Rosa had already sent a one-word text. Ready. At 8:03, HR flagged Trevor's badge. He walked in at 8:12, not knowing a thing. Said his usual, "Morning," to the front desk, not noticing they didn't respond. The head of HR, Dana, was waiting at his cubicle. She said, "We need to talk." He blinked, hesitated, then followed. I watched from my office. Glass walls, clean lines. Every sound softened but visible. Dana didn't close the blinds. It wasn't revenge. It was documentation and accountability. By 9 o'clock, the meeting was over. He came out looking like a man who'd walked through a sandstorm in a suit. Shoulders slumped, face pale. He didn't come near my office. Dana stopped by 10 minutes later. She said, he failed to disclose a direct conflict, tried to claim he didn't realize. I raised an eyebrow. And Melissa's name in his file? Removed. Also, we've flagged his access level. He's staying, under observation, no team lead duties. I nodded. Document everything. She smiled. Already done. That afternoon, an anonymous email circulated through Melissa's firm. A link to a blog post, Austin Brideout's Sisters Lie mid-ceremony, mic drop at law firm wedding. Photo attached. Me at the altar, phone in hand, Melissa in the background, mid-gasp. The comments section did not favor her. Later, Rosa forwarded me a screenshot. Aunt Doreen had posted on Facebook. We all make mistakes, some just make them louder. Underneath, no likes. Melissa's credibility didn't implode. It eroded. Quietly. Clients asked questions. Her boss requested a brief meeting. Back in my office, I opened the seating chart from the wedding again. I hadn't noticed it before. Melissa had scribbled over her original name tag. She'd moved herself closer to the mic. It was never an accident. And that, more than anything, told me how deep the jealousy ran. I sat there in my office, staring at the seating chart with that neat little scribble, her name scratched out, then rewritten in tighter loops 3 spots closer to the ceremony aisle. She wanted a moment. She made one. But now that moment lived in group chats, blog threads, and one particularly vicious meme Rosa sent me. Melissa photoshopped next to a mic stand with the caption, "Big Sis Energy. Audacity. 100%. I didn't laugh, not out loud, but I saved it to my phone. By Thursday, I got wind Melissa had taken a personal day. Aunt Doreen called that night. I let it ring once, twice, picked up. She didn't bother with hello. I just think you could have handled that more gracefully, she said, tone sharp with disappointment. I said, I agree. She paused, thrown. I added, I didn't scream. I didn't throw a drink. I told the truth. Well, she's your sister. And I'm her sister. That didn't stop her. Silence. Then, I always thought you'd be the one to mend things. I closed my laptop. Let the room go quiet. I did. I said. I let her come. I gave her a front row seat. She made her move. Aunt Doreen didn't respond. Just a faint exhale, like someone realizing the wind had changed and there was no sail left to fill. She hasn't called since. 2 days later, I left for my honeymoon. Nothing flashy, just Napa, a rented cottage, and 5 days of sleeping late and drinking wine before noon. No Melissa. No firm drama. Just quiet. Exactly the kind I liked. Rosa greeted me at the airport when we got back. She held flowers in one hand, champagne in the other, and grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Missed anything? I asked. Just this. She handed me a white envelope. No return address. No handwriting on the front. Inside, one item. A check for $5,000 and a yellow sticky note that read, "For your firm's next ethics training. Best T." The handwriting was steady. Masculine. Neat. It matched the thank you card he'd left on his first day at the firm. The one that said, "Hope to bring great value." I handed the check to Rosa. She squinted, read the note twice, then let out a low whistle. He's either very stupid or very sorry. Possibly both. We didn't cash the check, but we framed the sticky note. It sits in Rosa's office now, next to a photo of the two of us from law school graduation. She added a label underneath it in tiny print. Exhibit A. Audacity as currency. Back at work, Trevor kept his head down, said, "Morning," in the elevator like nothing had happened. HR sent out a firm-wide reminder on relationship disclosure policies the next week. Melissa didn't return my calls. Not that I made many, but one night, out of habit more than spite, I checked LinkedIn. Her bio still listed her as Senior CPA Client Strategy Lead, but the recommendations had vanished. Her activity? Dormant. Word gets around in small industries, especially when the story involves a mic, a vineyard, and a public meltdown now immortalized in 4 wedding blogs. One even used the headline, "Law Bride Silences Jealous Sister with One Legal Move." I didn't love the nickname, but I understood the appeal. A week later, another envelope showed up at the firm. No address, just a single index card inside, handwritten. Heard about the wedding. Clients are curious. Do you do media law? Underneath, a business card from a local PR agency. Big name. Reputation for handling high-profile corporate dust-ups. Rosa laughed when I showed her. "Your wedding turned into a brand." I said, Melissa should have charged for tickets. But the truth? She gave me something I never asked for. Proof that I didn't need to yell to be powerful. I just needed to let people listen. Within 2 weeks, our inbox filled with inquiries. Not about the wedding, about the firm. New clients, speaking requests, even a podcast pitch titled Silent Power: How One Woman Turned a Wedding into a Masterclass. I turned that one down, but I let Rosa handle the calls from the agencies. We tightened our intake screening, built a policy around internal conflicts. Trevor's situation became our teaching model, without ever naming him. As for Melissa, she didn't post her usual vacation photos that month. No beach brunch. No poolside cocktail boomerangs, just silence. Aunt Doreen resurfaced once in a group thread, tagging both of us in a meme that said, "Sisters, built-in best friends." Melissa didn't reply. Neither did I, but my mother called, said maybe this is the wake-up she needed. I said maybe. What I didn't say, I wasn't holding my breath, because this had never been about one moment. It wasn't the mic, it wasn't the lie. It was every family dinner where she corrected me mid-sentence. Every time she said, "Some people settle," when I chose to buy a home instead of chasing a man. Every little jab, dressed in lace and smiles. And still, I invited her. Not because I believed she'd changed, but because I'd changed. I knew I could withstand it. I knew what I was capable of now. And if she hadn't pulled that stunt, she'd still be the sister who smirked at me behind polite wine sips. Instead, she made herself a headline. The last update I got? Through Rosa's cousin, who works at Melissa's firm. Melissa's been reassigned. No more client-facing roles. Now she handles internal audits. Quietly. Behind the scenes. Just numbers. No spotlight. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I saw the seating chart again. The ink still sharp. Where she'd moved her name. She made her play. And I made mine. And mine wasn't just for the wedding. It was for every time someone asked if I was still working at that little law place, like I ran a lemonade stand and not a firm that handled 7-figure clients. It was for the way Aunt Doreen once said, Melissa just has more presence, like confidence was a volume knob. It was for my mother, who called me practical, never impressive. But mostly, it was for me, because I'd spent years letting Melissa's voice live louder in our family than my own. Now people were listening to me. Rosa started calling it the vineyard effect. Whatever you said at that altar, she told me, it landed. People finally saw the difference between ambition and attention. A few days later, a junior partner knocked on my door with a grin. He said, "Someone in legal ops wants to name the ethics refreshers the Keller Standard." I blinked. As in you, he said. The good Keller. I didn't say no, but I did insist it be written into our mentorship curriculum, not branded. We weren't going to turn my family drama into a firm slogan, but we would make sure no one like Trevor slipped through the cracks again. Speaking of, he kept his head down. He clocked in. He clocked out. One afternoon, I passed him by the elevators. He nodded. Polite. Nervous. I said, "Thanks for the training donation." His eyes went wide. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't stop walking. That night, Rosa and I opened a bottle of Cabernet and toasted to clean endings. She asked, "You think she'll ever apologize?" I said no. But I thought about it. Because something strange had started happening. Random cousins, old classmates, people I hadn't heard from in years, started reaching out. They all asked the same thing. So what exactly was on that phone? I got that question at least once a week now. People couldn't let it go. Maybe it was the way I held the phone up during the ceremony like I was about to read a verdict. Maybe it was the calm, the control. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because I didn't show them everything. I let the truth sit there, just out of reach, a tease, a quiet flex. So here's what was on the phone. First, the firm charter. Signed, sealed, time-stamped. My name listed as managing partner and owner. Dated 3 years ago. Back when Melissa was still telling people I dabbled in contracts and probably worked under someone else. Then came the board meeting notes, where Rosa and I voted on firm structure, equity disbursement, and the creation of our internal oversight division. I highlighted the line where we amended the bylaws to require ethics reviews for all senior hires. Trevor's title had triggered it. Automatically. That review was due to start the Monday after my wedding. And then there was Trevor's onboarding file. Not just the surface stuff. His resume, his college transcript, his job history. No. I had a second folder. Background reports from his previous firms. Rosa had double-checked them after his first week. One noted an interpersonal conflict resulting in HR mediation. Another showed he had left before a performance review. No formal complaints, just patterns, soft flags. The final file was the kicker. A screenshot of his emergency contact form. There, in clean Arial font, it read, "Emergency contact, Melissa Keller. Relationship, partner, cell, 512 XXX 4X. He submitted that 2 weeks before the wedding. He either didn't connect the names or didn't care. That's what was on my phone. I had it all in a locked album labeled Backup Wedding Notes. Nobody thought to ask twice. And Melissa? She never knew I'd prepped it. Never realized I'd been documenting her boyfriend's moves before she made hers. People assume revenge is loud, that it's wine in the face or screaming on sidewalks. But real power? Real vengeance? It's quiet. It's legal. It's airtight. And it comes with timestamps. The kicker came a week later. A new hire in HR. Young, nervous, eager to impress. Accidentally copied me on a firm-wide welcome email. Standard intro, team shoutouts, and a reminder to fill out all emergency contact fields in the onboarding portal. Attached, as a sample, Trevor's form. Melissa's name still filled the field. So I called HR. Told them, you might want to prompt him to update that, it's out of date. They flagged it. Sent him a reminder. By the next day, the name was gone. Not replaced. Just blank. Rosa said, "Think she dumped him?" I shrugged. Does it matter? He lost his title. She lost her narrative. And I got something better. Peace. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that doesn't ask for permission or explanation. It came in the form of quiet mornings, stronger boundaries, and knowing I'd finally outgrown the version of me that ever needed her approval. But still, on the day her firm's name came up in an internal client review flagged for a conflict, I sent one email. Please see my notes regarding personal conflicts with Melissa Keller's team. The matter was reassigned in under an hour. No need to explain. No drama. Just process. That's how you own the firm. And the room. It wasn't about payback anymore. Not really. That part had come and gone like a summer storm. Fast, loud, unforgettable. What lingered was better. Respect. People stopped underestimating me. Clients no longer addressed emails to Mr. Keller, assuming the man must be in charge. Interviewees came prepared, knew my name, my story. One even said, "Heard your wedding made legal history." I smiled and moved on, but not everyone took the shift gracefully. Aunt Doreen sent a Christmas card in early November. Gold embossed, heavy stock, the kind that screams, "I'm still fancy." Inside, a one-liner, "Family is what matters most. Don't let work turn you cold." I didn't respond. Melissa stayed silent too. Her name never came up directly, but I heard whispers. A mutual friend mentioned she'd pivoted to internal compliance, which we both knew meant desk duty and zero client interaction. Safe, controlled, unseen. Rosa called it poetic. She tried to humiliate you in public. Now her job depends on staying invisible. We clinked glasses to that one. One Thursday morning, our receptionist buzzed me, said someone dropped off an envelope. No name, just a wax seal with an M. Inside, a printed-out wedding photo. Me at the altar, Melissa blurred in the background. And a sticky note. You didn't cry, I did. Hope you're happy. I stared at the note a long time. There were no fingerprints, just faint smudges, like someone wiped it clean before delivering it. I didn't show Rosa, didn't frame it like the others, but I didn't throw it away either. Instead, I slid it into my drawer, the one where I keep the firm's first check, our incorporation docs, and the photo of Rosa and me on opening day. All the proof I ever needed. The photo with Melissa stayed face down. Some things don't need a spotlight to hold power. Later that week, Rosa asked if I ever thought about confronting Melissa, one last time, face to face. I said, she had her stage, and I meant it. Because if there's one thing that day taught me, it's this. The mic doesn't make you louder, the truth does. That line stayed with me. I didn't plan it, didn't rehearse it, but now it lived in my bones, like it had always been there, just waiting to surface. It changed how I carried myself. In meetings, I spoke less, listened more. People leaned in when I did talk. In court, I let silence stretch a few seconds longer. Let the other side fill it with nerves. At home, I stopped explaining myself altogether. I'd spent years making myself small for the comfort of others, especially Melissa, laughing off insults like they were jokes, letting her be the shiny one, the star. But the wedding cracked that glass. And the reflection on the other side? I liked her. Not just because she won, but because she stopped asking for permission to show up full-sized. Rosa noticed it too. You stand different, she said one afternoon while we were walking to lunch. I said maybe I finally outgrew the crouch. She laughed. You outgrew the whole room. We passed a boutique window. There, in the reflection, I caught my own eyes, clear, calm, unbothered. Melissa hadn't reached out again. I half expected a New Year's text, maybe even a backhanded apology. But nothing came. The silence used to itch. Now it felt like clean linen. Until one night, in February, I got an email. No subject line. No sender listed. Just one line of text. She applied here. Should we move forward? Attached was a resume. Melissa's. I stared at it. Her credentials were still sharp. Her experience, on paper, solid. But there it was. My firm's name, listed nowhere. Like she'd never known me. Never stood at a mic. Never spit venom in front of our entire family. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat with it. Not out of anger, but choice. Power, I realized, isn't the moment you win. It's what you do with the win afterward. So I took a breath, clicked reply, and typed 3 words. Not a fit. Then I poured a glass of wine, opened the balcony door, and let the cool night roll over me. No explanation. No footnote. No history lesson. Just a clean, professional rejection. The kind Melissa had probably sent to dozens of junior applicants over the years, never thinking twice. I didn't need revenge anymore, but I wasn't going to be her safety net either. Rosa read the email over my shoulder the next morning. She didn't say a word until she finished sipping her coffee. Then she smirked. Graceful. Deadly, I shrugged. I'm not here to fix what she broke. We didn't talk about it again. That afternoon, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. Thick paper, pale blue envelope. My name written in her careful, cheerleader-perfect cursive. No return address, but I didn't need one. Melissa. Inside. A short note. I thought you'd understand. We both know how hard it is to be taken seriously. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just panicked. You looked so complete. I felt erased. No apology. Just a confession soaked in self-pity. A glimpse into the same insecurity that had driven her since prom night. She never hated me. She just hated not being the center. I folded the letter once and tucked it into the same drawer as the check and the wedding photo. Not to revisit. just to remember. Because sometimes survival isn't about winning. It's about keeping the receipt. A week later, Rosa and I hosted a firm brunch. New hires, long-timers, interns, all laughing over mimosas and fresh tortillas. Someone gave a toast to the women who run the place. They meant us. I locked eyes with Rosa, clinked glasses, and smiled. Melissa's voice used to echo in my mind like a siren, shrill, impossible to ignore. Now it was just a whisper in a drawer, powerless. That Sunday night, as I was sorting files, my phone buzzed. A new Venmo notification from an anonymous account. $5, memo, mic drop. I didn't reply, I just hearted it. Because when you've said everything that needs saying, silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. That $5 Venmo felt like the last pebble tossed into a still pond. Tiny, unnecessary, but still creating ripples. Maybe it was Melissa. Maybe Trevor. Maybe someone else from that vineyard day who realized they hadn't seen the whole picture until the last slide faded. Didn't matter. I closed the app, turned off my phone, and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the Texas sky was wide and clean. The live oaks swayed like old souls, unbothered by storms already past. I'd started leaving the balcony door open more, letting in the breeze like a daily reset. A habit that said, no one owns your peace but you. In the weeks since the wedding, something subtle had shifted inside me. I used to brace myself walking into rooms, especially around family. Used to second-guess how I said things, whether I was too direct, too polished, not warm enough. Melissa never worried about that. She'd enter like a parade float and leave with everyone complimenting her earrings. But now, when I walked into a room, people listened. Not because I yelled, because I didn't have to. I'd earned that. Not in a single moment, but in the years of quiet work, of decisions no one applauded, of not quitting when it would have been easier to fade out. Rosa joked recently, you used to be the shadow behind the empire. Now you're the silhouette on the skyline. I laughed, but I knew what she meant. Even the family dynamic had changed. Cousins texted me for career advice. My uncle introduced me at a reunion as the Keller who runs the law firm. And my parents, God bless them, finally started telling their friends that both daughters were successful. They just didn't say it at the same volume. Melissa didn't try again. No follow-up email. No job requests. No holiday texts. And that was fine. Not every story ends with a big reconciliation. Some end with boundaries. Some end with lessons. And some just stop. One afternoon, I pulled out the drawer where I'd stored it all. The wedding photo, the check from Trevor, the sticky notes, her apology. That wasn't. I didn't toss them. But I did move them into a folder labeled Closed Files. I stared at it a long moment. Then I smiled, shut the drawer, and turned back to the living world. The sun was high. My firm was thriving. Rosa was tapping on my door with 2 iced coffees and a smile like she had gossip I needed to hear. Guess who's applying to speak at the Women in Finance panel next month? She said, sliding into the chair. I raised an eyebrow. Don't say Melissa. Rosa grinned. I said don't say it. She handed me the flyer. And sure enough, there it was. Keynote applicant Melissa Keller. Rosa said, you want me to block it? I looked at the name, the headshot, the polished bio, and then I laughed. Honest, full, unbothered. No, I said, sipping my coffee. Let her try. Because some mics turn on, and some mics remember,